Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's August 23rd. Sometimes I think cutting your bangs is a great analogy for pruning in the garden. You know how when your bangs are growing out and they make it a little past your eyebrow, you think, I'm going to grow these bangs out. I'm going to have amazing hair. And then they start to grow past your nose and you realize that this was a complete mistake. And now you don't have the stamina to make it all the way to growing your bangs out and having no bangs anymore. And it's time to get this crazy idea back in check. Well, sometimes the same things will happen with the flowers that are spilling into your paths and walkways, meandering into other areas where they don't belong. Today, the student gardeners and I clipped back the catmint that had been allowed to go wherever it wanted, in addition to the sumac and the artemisia. And when it was all done, I thought, I should have done this a month ago. Sometimes it requires a little extra wherewithal to prune things, especially if you have a soft spot for them, like stonecrop or sedum, or dainty little ground covers like thyme. But when it's done, your garden looks a little lighter, a little more put together. All the flowers seem happier that the work is done. And the garden looks brand new and ready to show off their new haircut to the world. Here's today's Brevities. Today is the day that Catholics celebrate the patron saint of gardeners and flowers. It's Saint Rose of Lima Day. Saint Rose worked to serve the poor. She was a Dominican. There was a malaria epidemic during the 1600s, and Saint Rose worked to heal the sick, and in some cases, she did. Saint Rose was the first saint born in the Americas. When she was born, her parents named her Isabel, but she became known as Rose. One time, when she was sleeping in her cradle, all her mother saw was the figure of a rose on the side of her cheek. And so she started calling her Rose, and she was also very beautiful. Sadly, Rose died when she was just 31 years old in 1617. And today is the anniversary of the death of the Scottish ornithologist and poet Alexander Wilson. Wilson immigrated to the United States from Paisley, Scotland. His family called him Sandy. He quickly became one of the foremost naturalists of his time. Before John James Audubon, there was Alexander Wilson, who was born 20 years before Audubon. Wilson is known as the father of American ornithology. Wilson wrote the very first ornithology of American birds. When he completed his publication, which he had prepared in 9 volumes, it was sold for an exorbitant price, $120. Even John James Audubon passed on owning a copy for that price. But Wilson ended up living at Gray's Ferry, where he took charge of a school founded by John Bartram. Right down the street lived William Bartram, of all people. Bartram operated his own nursery called Bartram Botanical Gardens, and he became a mentor for Wilson. Bartram was the best kind of mentor, encouraging and honoring Wilson's unique talents and interests. In fact, it was actually William Bartram who helped Wilson learn to draw birds. And today is the anniversary of the death of Eliza Sullivan. She'd been taught by her husband about botany and other subjects. When she died in 1850, her husband, William Starling Sullivan, praised her scientific drawings of mosses. Eliza was his second wife. Sullivan fell in love with her about the same time he fell in love with botany. The Sullivans lived in a gorgeous Italianate home they called Sullivan Hill. There was a large pasture there, and Sullivan would get up early in the morning and walk through it, identifying the flowers and the plants and the grasses and the sedges. He got curiouser and curiouser about botany, so before you know it, he was corresponding with Dr. Asa Gray from Harvard and Dr. John Torrey from Princeton. Once Sullivan was botanizing in Highland County, Ohio, and he ran across a little plant with tiny, delicate white flowers and ornate leaves. He sent it to Gray and Torrey, and in turn, they named it Sullivantii ohioensis. Sullivan's herbarium, which had nearly 10,000 specimens, was donated to Harvard through Dr. Asa Gray. And today is the birthday of Hazel Marguerite Schmoll, who was born in McAllister, Kansas on this day in 1890. Schmoll was born in a sod cabin, and her family settled in Colorado when she was just 2 years old. Schmoll was the first woman to earn a doctorate in botany from the University of Chicago, and she had the opportunity early on in her career to work with Alice Eastwood. It was Hazel Schmoll who said, "I hope we can keep some wilderness areas. People need some places where they can get away from the crowds and be refreshed by nature." In Unearthed Words, here's a verse from Rose Kingsley from her book, The Autumn Garden, published in 1905. In the garden, autumn is indeed the crowning glory of the year, bringing us the fruition of months of thought and care and toil. And at no season, save perhaps in daffodil time, do we get such superb color effects as from August to November. Today's book recommendation is The Prickly Pear Cookbook by Carol Needhammer. The first time I grew prickly pear cactus in my garden, I immediately fell in love with it. This charming cookbook celebrates the prickly pear. The spines of the plant actually protect it from being eaten, but fortunately, we found a way around that. The cookbook contains 60 recipes for using the fruit of the cactus in addition to the pads, all of which are edible and all of which are nutritious. And Needhammer teaches that it's increasingly included in the treatment of diabetes. Needhammer is a wild food expert and a master cook. For today's garden chore, now is a fantastic time to start thinking about spring plant swaps. And here's a little garden hack you can try to make your spring rush a little easier. Take your divisions now, pot them up in soil with a heavy amount of perlite so they have great drainage, and then dig the pots into the ground. They'll be thrilled to overwinter there, and they'll look fabulous in the spring. Then when everyone else is going bananas a day or two before the plant swap, you can pat yourself on the back, go and grab a coffee, and you'll never forget how to make the best use of your fall divisions. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today in 1942, the Michigan Botanical Club summer meeting was held at the University of Michigan Biological Station at Douglas Lake. It was a 3-day meeting lasting through August 26th, and it was held in conjunction with the Sullivan Moss Society in honor of William Starling Sullivan, who we just learned about earlier in today's episode. Happy coincidence. During the meeting, there were daily field trips and evening discussions about mosses and lichens and liverworts. The focus on mosses was something new to the members of the Wildflower Association who were in attendance. They were amazed and delighted, having found an entirely new world of nature. And it was reported that one of their members, Fred Case Jr., had been stricken with polio, so he couldn't attend the meeting. The members put together a dish garden containing a seedling pitcher plant, a 1-inch tall cedar, 25 or 30 mosses, and other woodland plants. Fred was just 15 years old, and he had already written a treaty called Orchids of the Western Great Lakes region, which he had dedicated to the botanist Marjorie T. Bingham, who was his teacher and friend. Fred had organized all of the members of the first junior chapter of the Michigan Wildflower Association in Saginaw. The group was really his Boy Scout troop. They had started up a wildflower sanctuary on his dad's place. But every one of them ended up entering the armed services during World War II, except for Fred, thanks to his polio diagnosis. When the men returned from the war, they went on with their lives, and the junior chapter of the Saginaw Wildflower Association closed. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up, and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great weekend in the garden, and we'll see you on Monday.